What is the most used man-made material on Earth? You guessed right, it's concrete. Look around, it's everywhere. Sidewalks, driveways, foundations, floor you stand on, and even entire buildings are made out of concrete. So why don't we discuss it more? In each episode of Concrete Logic, we'll explore one concrete-related topic with the help from industry professionals that are shaping the future of the trade. We'll talk with suppliers, contractors, architects, engineers, specialists, and even some proponents of competing materials about their views of concrete and their vision of its future. And welcome to another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. And today I have Oscar Garcia with Need to Say, and he's going to help us figure some, immigration problems out. Maybe we'll fix some problems today. I don't know. Some communication problems. But Oscar, if you could you give a little intro to yourself and your company?
Absolutely. First of all, Seth, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor. My name is Oscar Garcia. I'm founder and CEO at Need to Say. Our goal is to keep construction workers safe by removing language barriers.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier before we hit record, and I think what we should talk about, Oscar, is how did we get to a point that the majority of our workforce does not speak English? How did we get to that point?
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to the 1980s. So I was born in the 80s. My dad was a farmer back then. And back in the 80s, being a farmer in Mexico was great. They had credits from the government, subsidies. They had this organization from the government that would help them give insurance, sell their crops, all of those things. However, by the late 80s, beginning of the 90s, the Mexican president signed the NAFTA agreement, or the NAFTA treaty between Canada, the US, and Mexico. And so what happened was that they were told, and again, my dad was one of them, they were told, with this, you will be able to sell your crops to the US and Canada. It's going to be a lot easier. However, it was never that easy. So because as soon as they signed the treaty, the government decided to shut down these three organizations. So they couldn't have insurance for the crops. They couldn't have credits, subsidies, and they couldn't, and the organization that used to help them sell their crops disappeared. And so now you have thousands of farmers that have all these, products they cannot sell, all these produce. And my dad was one of them. And so he was struggling for many years. And then, like many other Mexican farmers, he decided to come to the US. And the only way you can come to the US, it's the two different ways, right? The first one, you go and get a tourist visa. If you want to come to the US with a tourist visa, first of all, you have to prove that you have a really good job. You own the house, you have money in the bank, you have all those things, right? So not an option. Second option is if a company from the US gives you a job, and again, this is before you come into the US, and they give you a work visa, that's the other option. Well, for all these farmers, they don't have this high skill degrees. They don't even have the degrees, so nobody's going to do that. So there's not a version of an H-1B for them, none of that. So, like, as you know, many of them decided just to cross the border, and so in the early 90s, that's when you started to see that immigration from Mexico skyrocketed. before that, you didn't see all of these, Mexicans all over the U.S. Now you can see that. And so it was all these farmers. And I was one of those kids, Seth, that I grew up without my dad. I mean, he was here working, and I was in Mexico with my siblings and my mother. And I remember, begging my dad, like, please just take me with you. And he would be like, no, you're better off here. You don't understand. But I was like, Dad, like, I see everything looks amazing on the Hollywood movies, and he's like, you don't understand. You stay here, you go to school, I'll be able to pay you tuition so you and your siblings can go to college. And so pretty much from elementary, middle school, high school, and college, my dad was never there for graduation. He was always here working. And so it was tough. It was tough to grow up without him. And I always had that idea of one day I'll go to the U.S. and I'll go to college because I want to see where my dad is, what is happening, blah, blah. And that's what kept that fire in me in thinking I'm going to do it. And so it was in 2011, when I graduated from college in Mexico, when I was able to get a scholarship from the government, from the Mexican government, to study in the U.S. And when I came here, Seth, one of the first things I saw was like, oh my goodness, where the Mexicans live are the worst neighborhoods. They're not the good zip codes, and their children, they don't go to the best schools. And I'm like, this is what my dad was trying to prevent me, and that's the reason why he did not want me to come here. Seth, I went back to my dad and I said, thank you, because I didn't understand that, and I was like, wow. And so now I said to myself, I want to do something for my people. I want to help them learn the language, because I used to volunteer at a local library, and I started to have all these ESL students, and mainly from Mexico. And they were like, can we take classes with you where you work at this university? And I said, well, if you want to take classes there, it's $8,000 for 3 months of ESL classes. And you have to have a student visa. They were like, oh, okay, well, and they were taking classes just once a week. So, but I could see their desire to learn the language, to learn English. And I saw that in my dad, because he said, for all the time that I was in the U.S., I was never able to learn English because I was always working 2 or 3 jobs. And again, man, it brings back all these memories. But so that's the long story short. That's why all these people is here, and all these farmers, again, from Mexico, and not just from Mexico, from Central America, that started coming here.
Yeah, that really puts a different light than most people have on that situation. They just think people are coming here to take advantage of our systems and things like that. But what you were sharing with me before we hit record is that generation of folks that are coming over here after that NAFTA agreement, those farmers. You're saying the generation behind them, they're not coming this way. They're going to stay at home, because I guess you're saying they're more educated.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
That's correct. So my generation, it was that generation that, we're the children of those farmers. The good thing is that our generation was able to go to college. And so all of my friends, for instance, all my friends from Mexico, they all have businesses, they have an education, they work for all these different companies. And like I said to you earlier, a lot of these Mexican startups have become unicorns. They're making millions of dollars now, and they're Mexican companies. So it has, and I always say to people, these construction workers that you see here, these people doing landscaping or whatever job, at the restaurants, nobody's going to replace them. It's coming to replace them, because the children of those people were able to go to college, were able to get an education. And that's what all of these people, that are here, that's what they're doing, trying to help their children back home. And again, I know that because I was one of them. And what is really interesting is that when I graduated from college, there were like 150 graduates just from my career, from my degree, and I'm the only one here, and it's something really interesting that tells you the power of education, right? And so, but that's my generation.
Yeah. So do you? So it sounds like Mexico is doing a good job as far as educating their folks, but we're still, I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but there still seems like there's an influx. The big news is the Texas border, right?
Yes.
Are those folks from other poor countries that may have this, I guess, the farmer issue that Mexico had in the past? These are poor folks, uneducated folks that are coming up here for those jobs, and something's happened in those other countries where farming is no longer feasible for them to make a living?
I think for Central American countries, it's worse. You have to keep in mind that Mexico, it's part of the G20. Mexico is part of the 20 most powerful economies in the world. I think Mexico is number 10. And by 2050, Mexico is going to become one of the 5 most powerful economies in the world. And that tells you of these generations, right? And tells you, if you go to Mexico right now, you'll see all these Costco's, Home Depots, they're all over the place. And that's just Walmart. They're all these things, all these companies, all these industries. Now, if you go to any country in Central America, you don't see any of that. They're really poor countries that have a lot of issues with, really bad issues with security, access to education, some of the basic rights, some of the basic things. Fortunately, Mexico doesn't have any of that. What Mexico used to be or is the U.S. is what for countries of Central America is Mexico. Let me explain this. When I was in college in Mexico, I met this guy and I said, "Oh, so where are you from?" I mean, I was like, "Where are you from? Like, what part of Mexico are you from?" And he said, "Well, I'm actually from Costa Rica." I was like, "Wow, I did not know you were from Costa Rica. Like, I don't hear any accent." And he said, "Yeah, well, I've been here for about 10 years." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." And he said, "I just became a Mexican citizen. It took me 10 years to wait for my citizenship. I got on a scholarship, went to college." And he said, "What you guys don't understand, you Mexicans don't understand that you have so many opportunities here in Mexico that we don't have. And Mexico is the land of opportunity for us, from people from Central America and South America." Wow, I did not know that. And that's true. And if you go to Mexico, you'll see people from Argentina, Venezuela. It's like there are states in Mexico that are thousands of people from Venezuela, like all these different countries. And it didn't dawn on me. And, Brazil, all these different countries. And yeah, Mexico, the news portray Mexico here in the U.S. as like, oh, all these cartels and all these things. But the reality is that if you see the numbers of the economy, how the people are doing, education, all companies, all these things, it's a different story. And that's why, it's a big difference. And so all these people from Central America that are trying to get to the U.S., once they get to Mexico, they're like, well, we should probably stay here. And that's what's happening. On the one hand, it's not easy to cross the border. Regardless of what people say, it's not easy to cross the border. It's almost impossible because there's so much technology right now, satellite, sensors, all kinds of things. So most of those folks, they're staying in Mexico, and we know that, right? And so definitely the demographics of Mexico is changing a lot. Mexico has always been that country that has taken people from all over the world, right? Whenever there's a war. I'll give you a quick example, and it's a funny one. You know, in Mexico, we invented the tacos, right? And so in Mexico, we have this type of taco that is called taco or tacos al pastor. And they're like the most delicious tacos al pastor. Like everybody knows them. But I did not know that tacos al pastor are not originally from Mexico. This way of cooking the meat came from the Middle East when they took thousands of people from Lebanon, from all these countries. I did not know that. And I did not know that in Mexico, there's this huge community of people from Lebanon that, of course, they're Mexicans now, right? But that's where they came from before. They were the ones who came up with this, right? I did not know that there's this big town that was that started by Italians, and it's it's a melting pot, just like the U.S. And right now, it's even becoming more and more because all these people from Haiti, all these people from even right now from my goodness, what's the country that's being invaded by Russia?
Ukraine.
People from Ukraine. Yeah. Mexico has always been this country taking refugees from all over the world. And it's this melting pot. If you go to Mexico, you're going to see people from all over the world. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, and not all those countries obviously speak Spanish, but most of those do. So that's probably a easier transformation into that culture versus coming here in the U.S. where no one wants to learn Spanish. Yes. Everyone speaks English, yeah. and so that's probably easier. And if I guess, just thinking if I was in their shoes, if I was coming from a poor Central American country and all I knew was Spanish, I would want to move to a country that spoke my language, right? So Mexico seems like a good stopping point, right? Especially if it's, I shared with you, my wife and I, we had our honeymoon in Mexico. That's the last time I've been there, and that was eons ago. But you were saying, since I've been there, I'm sure it's even more so, is that the influx of American companies down there, and you're saying all the same stores that we see up here, Costco and Walmart and those things, all that stuff's down there. So it's been there for years. It's been there. Yeah. And what is something that is really interesting right now? So in Mexico, these are old statistics, but there are about 5 million Americans that live in Mexico, and the majority of them are retirees. That was in the past. But right now, the majority of Americans who are moving to Mexico are young Americans, because right now all you need is just a computer, right? And so you can work remotely wherever. And so right now there are, I was actually looking at the news the other day that in Mexico City is like a big hub for American entrepreneurs to move there and to live there, because it's like living in Manhattan, but half the price. And yeah, it's the same thing in every city. You saw Puerto Vallarta, right? So it's the same thing in Puerto Vallarta. And so that's why I guess, the mobility, it just takes 2 hours to go to anywhere in Mexico, pretty much, from the U.S. Mm-hmm. and a big population in Mexico speaks English, and you get the the economy is fine. You don't hear things that, like, I don't know. There are no, like, of course we all have issues, right? Mexico has issues, but you never hear
things of, oh, there's this huge devaluation from the Mexican peso. The Mexican economy is really bad. All these things. You never hear any of those things because things are great. And so all of these new commerce to Mexico are, there and not just enjoying the good weather and the beach and all that. I always say that the best part of Mexico is the people. The people are very friendly, very nice. And so that's one of the things that makes the people who have ever visited Mexico to go back there and to keep going there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, here they tell you all the bad things that happen in Mexico or other countries outside the United States because they don't want us to go there and take our talents elsewhere. So that's my guess.
Yeah.
But we were talking about so we have all these folks here that mostly were farmers, and they're coming over and they're doing the jobs like construction. And this is the podcast about concrete construction. So I thought it'd be good to have you on because I was sharing with you a lot of our folks, our craft folks, and are from South America, Central America, Mexico, but a lot of them are from El Salvador. I think a majority of them are from El Salvador, and we, constantly are trying to communicate with them, and we're very lucky. We have very talented folks that are bilingual that help us with that effort. Because like you said, there's some people come here, even if they want to learn English, it sounds like we're not doing a very good job of giving them the opportunities to learn English. So you came up with some software to help with that. Could you share what that is? There's like two pieces of it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, let me first say that I used to be an ESL instructor here in the U.S. And so I know.
I'm sorry, stop. What's ESL? Could you?
English as a second language. So I was.
Okay.
I used to teach foreigners English, how to read, how to write. And this is for college, right? How to write essays, how to give presentations, how to do all these different things. And so that's typically international students, they get access to that. They pay, like I said earlier, an average of $8,000 for 3 months of ESL classes. They come here with a tourist visa, all these different things. So it's very expensive to learn English. And so I thought, okay, that's, another reason why many of these people don't speak any English, right? And yeah, there are all these apps, there are all these different things out there, but the majority of them were not designed for immigrants. They were designed for people who are like, oh, I'm going to France. I'm going to learn some French so I can communicate and try to order and ask where the restaurant is, things like that. But never to these people, to the immigrants who are like, I need to get a job. How can I ask for a job? How can I introduce myself? I forgot my safety glasses. How do I say that I forgot my safety glasses? Things like that. And I was like, I want to come up with something that can help them little by little learn the language, communicate. And so we have two different apps. On one of the apps, you can learn, you start by learning words and then sentences and then phrases, and then you go from there. So we teach them, this is what we call English for specific purposes. In this case, you just learn English for the construction industry. That's what you learn. You don't learn anything else. We're not going to teach you how to order something at a fast food restaurant. We're teaching you how to communicate at the construction site. What is this doing? What this software is doing, what the app, this mobile app helps them is that we're not trying to, our goal is not to be a translator. We're not trying for them to use their cell phones to be like, this is what I'm trying to say. No, we're like, we want them to start to communicate themselves. And so what is happening right now is that they're saying things like, there is a floor opening. This bar does not have guardrails. And I'm done with this. What else am I supposed to do? All these different things that before they couldn't communicate that. And they were waiting for the only bilingual person that can communicate that. And things like Google Translate, things like that, they're not reliable because, again, they were designed for a different purpose, not for the construction industry. And so we did that app. And we also came up with OSHA awareness videos for them to learn more about OSHA, because the majority of them have no clue what is OSHA. We don't have a version of OSHA in Mexico. There's no version of OSHA in Central America. So we wanted to teach them what is that. And so we also came up with mental health videos, because the majority of the resources out there are in English. They're not in Spanish. We wanted to do that as well. And the final thing that we did, we just came up with a new app, and this is the Need to Say chat. And so on this chat, it's for those construction workers that have a lot going on and they have no time to learn, they have no time to do anything, but they still have the need to communicate. And so what it does is that I don't speak any English, but you need to communicate with me, right? You can send me a text in English. I receive the text and I request translation, and I see the translation in Spanish. I reply back to you in Spanish. You get it in Spanish, and then you request a translation, and you see it in English. The reason why the translation is not automatic is because, remember, we're teaching you English or we're teaching you Spanish. And so if there's a phrase that you already know, you're not going to request a translation because you already know that, right? You can go back to the other app and be able to pronounce that. And this is not AI, this is not machine learning, this is a real person doing the translation, because in the construction industry, there's a very specific terminology. We don't want to put people at risk with a bad translation coming from AI. We want to come up with something that is real, that it's according to that context. And so that's what we did so that we can help construction workers, again, because this is for both. This is for American and Hispanic workers. So if you as an American, if you want to learn Spanish for construction, you can do so. Or, you know, as a Latin American construction worker, you want to learn English, yeah, you can do that, right? So that's what we did so that we can completely remove the language barrier, Seth, and provide a tool to the construction workers to keep growing in the industry, because we have a lot of them that said, hey, I want to learn more. I want to know more, but the language barrier, it's there. It's very difficult for me. So that's what we're doing.
Wow. And did you work in construction before? I know you said you were teaching ESL students, but did you work in construction before and you saw this as an issue, or?
No, I did not. Actually, we pivoted, Seth, because at the beginning, we were trying to do this, the first app, we were trying to do it for international students and foreign professionals. We were like, we want to help them pronounce the words. We want to help them learn English faster and blah, blah, all these things. But we had this presentation one time, and there was someone from the construction industry and came to me and said, hey, Oscar, I like what you're doing, but it would be great if you do it for the construction industry. And I was like, huh. And I did my research, and I found that each year more than 1,000 Hispanic construction workers die at a construction site, and that the number of injuries and accidents have risen with Hispanic workers. And one of the main causes was the language barrier, according to OSHA, because what construction companies do, and this is what Hispanic workers say. They say, hey, Oscar, we know they're trying. They typically, they have us watch a video related to safety in Spanish, right? That is all good. Problem is that we go back to the construction site and everything is in English, right? And if I wanted to communicate with the safety manager, foreman, all these people, I can't do it. And I'm like, how I would love to learn so I can communicate and do these things. So that's why we're like, okay, we're not going to wait for Silicon Valley to try to come up with something. I think we can do this ourselves, and come up with a solution for construction companies that have this need. And again, it's millions of dollars of what construction companies pay of OSHA fines, of accidents, and all these things. It's actually $1.5 billion. And we're like, we're going to come up with something. And that's why we came up with this.
Yeah, definitely. The accident prevention is definitely key and forefront. But like you mentioned before, the delay for people to communicate. So like the example you made was someone finishes a task.
Yes.
They stand around and wait for someone that's bilingual to tell them what to do next. So all the time that's wasted for that. So if there's a communication tool or tools that you can use to shorten that as well, that would.
And in addition to that,
definitely, I could see the need for that.
Exactly. And in addition to that is the feedback. You as the leader, as the manager, as the owner of the company, you're missing out all this feedback that you can get from these workers on how to do things better, on how to, save materials, improve processes, or it's a lot. So it's a lot that is not being shared, right? And so that's what we're trying to change.
Yeah. Do you get have you run into any pushback on having, cell phones, mobile devices, with each person on the job site? Have you ran into that yet? Because I know there's a push to at least not eliminate them all, but control the number of those on site.
Absolutely, yes, that is definitely an issue because all of these workers, they're on social media and being distracted all the time. So a solution that we are coming up with, it's a device that has no access to social media. It's a device that they will only get access to the apps, to the resources that the company wants them to use, and they will still be able to communicate, right? They will still be able to communicate, but they will not be able to, get distracted on social media and things like that. And it's a big issue. It's a huge issue right now in the construction industry. And even more with these new apps that are out there that show you like hundreds of videos in like seconds, right? So we're aware of that, and so far there hasn't been a company that have said, they cannot use cell phones. There are certain areas where they cannot use cell phones, but on the break or after hours they can do so and learn, do things. But that's definitely one of the things that we're working on right now with some construction companies.
Yeah. Do you see more demand from the, Spanish folks, Spanish-speaking folks? Do you see more demand on that side versus English-speaking folks, or what does it look like for you right now?
Yeah, it's actually both. It's actually both right now because trying to hire bilinguals for the construction industry is very difficult. We have companies that have said that they had bilingual people to translate, but in reality, they were not doing a good job and they did not know. And we know that it happens. I'm a linguist. I know what it takes to be a bilingual person. You have to go to college for that. It's not easy to translate things, to do, and especially if there's a situation where you can put people at risk, especially if someone is injured, you need to ask questions, all kinds of things. It's not an easy job. And that's one of the things that we're doing. And with all the service that we provide, we're doing that with professionals and not just someone say, well, I've been here in the US for 3 or 5 or 10 years now. I can translate, I can do that. When in reality, it's more than that. And so, so it's with both, because both American Latin Americans, they have the need to communicate with each other.
Yeah. No, the time that you can cut down to communicate that one-on-one versus to, if someone's trying to communicate, right, and they're Spanish speaking only, and it's like that game of telephone where you tell somebody something and then they get what they heard and then they spit it to somebody else. I'm sure there's a lot of that going on, lost in translation, just not amongst two people, but amongst three people. So if there's a tool like yours where you can just, that person that's trying to communicate is communicating to one person. That's valuable.
There are, Seth, so many examples of that, and lost in translation. There was one I was watching the other day. There were two construction workers, and they were told to remove the floor of the bathroom of a house. When the owner of the house came to the house, they had removed the entire floor of the house. It was a wooden floor. The guy came to the house, he almost had a heart attack. And he was like, I told you that only the floor of this bathroom, you did all of it. Oh my God, it cost me $20,000. It happens all of the time. And so, that's one of the reasons, we were doing this.
Yeah. No, the safety, like we said, the safety thing, definitely. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah. Pointing things out or getting things out in front when there's a safety hazard is a definite. And then, preventing major accidents and deaths is very, very important. But the loss of time and money on miscommunication. I mean, shoot, us English speaking people, we have a hard time speaking to communicating to us to each other clearly as it is. I can't imagine what a Spanish speaking person is hearing from us. They're like, what? What's the garbly goop coming out of that guy's mouth?
Exactly. And here's another thing, because of the differences in culture, right? You have a group of Hispanic workers and you say, do you understand? Guess what they're going to say? They're going to say, yes, even if they have no clue of what you're saying. Why are they saying that? Why don't they say, I don't understand? No entiendo. Why don't they say that? Because back in our countries, if you're working for a company, and if I say to you, do you understand? And if you don't understand, that says that you are not a very smart worker, and I don't want to have you in my company. And that's the message. That's what they have in their, I guess, DNA. And that's what they will always say, yes, I understand. And they will not question. They're not going to do any of that, because that's the background knowledge of how it used to be done back in the countries. And that's why they don't ask questions. And what we're trying to do is no. Here in the US, it is okay to ask questions. It is okay for you to say, I don't understand. It is okay for you to say, hey, I have no idea what you're trying to tell me. Can you explain that to me one more time?
Yeah. If folks don't get anything out of this podcast, I think that last 30 seconds is the most important thing. Is next time we ask someone, do they understand? And English is not their first language. Maybe we need to tell them it's okay. It's okay to ask questions. But Hey, Oscar, I think that's a good spot to end the conversation today. If folks want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
The best way, they can go to our website, need2say.com. I'm going to repeat that. It's need as in the verb need, Number 2, say, S as in Sam, A as in Apple, Y as in yellow.com, need to say.com. So we're going to help you say what you need to say. That's why it's need to say.
Yeah. And I'll put that in the show notes too. So there'll be a link to when we post the podcast, and then the all of our posts, social media and newsletter. We'll have that out so you guys know how to get a hold of Oscar. It's a pretty cool piece of technology. Oscar, thank you for coming on the show today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Seth, for having me. It's been a wonderful pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for another Concrete Logic podcast episode. If you got some value out of this or you enjoyed it, please share it with others. And if you could take a moment and give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast listening app, I would appreciate it. We will catch you on the next episode. And now Mike Dunton's going to take us out.
Ring, ring, that alarm always sings. Couple hours before the sun comes up. Open up the side, put some diesel in the lights, and wait till the trucks roll up. Yeah, this ain't how most folks live their lives, dripping in sweat, working overtime. But while they're tying their ties for their 9 to 5s, we're out here changing these skylines with wood, iron, and mud. We work hard for $1, give thanks to the Lord above. Something you can't prove. Hard work calls for a drink or two. Expect more, it's written in our blood. With wood, iron, and mud. From the swamps to the city, from the Lone Star heat to the woods of the Georgia pine. Good old boys and girls who ain't afraid of getting dirty for a clean time. And if you want to see the fire in a grown man's eyes beneath the hot summer sun, find the wild-eyed boys clocking days and nights, working hard to get that job done with wood, iron, and mud. We work hard for $1, give thanks to the Lord above. The color of our collars ain't white or blue, we're all gray collar through and through. Expect more, it's written